inside my head is sad to fade away. To hear your quiet slowly distracts my head. It's a girl in the middle of the nothingness. And you tell me why to all do the truth, and I spend 3 days explaining with you. And you disappear in front of my eyes. So that's why I remember I'm unrealized. And it really means the sunshine, my love. And I really miss the sunshine, baby. Oh yeah. And I really miss the sunshine, my love. And I really miss the sunshine, baby. Oh yeah. Thousands of people and friends, regardless directions ahead. It's only the loneliness I feel, so lonely. I need time to rain. The grains on my head is sad to fade away. To hear your quiet slowly distracts my head. It's a girl in the middle of the nothingness. And you tell me why to all do my true. And I spend 3 days explaining to you. And you disappear in front of my eyes. So that's why I remember I'm unrealized. And I really miss the sunshine, my love. And I really miss the sunshine, baby. Oh yeah. And I really miss the sunshine, my love. And I really miss the sunshine, baby. Oh yeah. Tell me why to you. And you tell me why to all do the truth. And I spend 3 days explaining with you. And you disappear in front of my eyes. So that's why I remember I'm unrealized. And you tell me why to all do the truth. And I spend 3 days explaining with you. And you disappear. And I really miss the sunshine, baby. And I really miss the sunshine, baby. Oh yeah. And I really miss the sunshine, baby. And I really miss the sunshine, baby. One, two, three. Look into the eyes and you shout the end of the world. I would never do love, but I would call it begun. Can't express me still, can't express me still. The absolution. Can't express me still, can't express me still. The absolution of love. It's a precious baby, it's a precious baby. That's what you are. It's a precious baby, it's a precious baby. Next time you say don't talk, I say you talk. Because no one's lived in life. I need to compromise my life. And I say that you always saw my bad side. Because can't express me still, can't express me still. Because can't express me still, can't express me still. The absolution. It's a precious baby, it's a precious baby. That's what you are.
Hey guys, how are you doing? Happy Saturday, morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever and whenever you are. I hope you guys are having a good day so far. I'm just trying to check in some of the audio levels here, making sure everything is okay. I've noticed that I'm a little too close to the mic. Oh, my muted sign. I can take that off now. So I'm trying to back off it a little bit. So I'm trying to find that balance of close enough to be heard, but not too close to be too heard. Anyway. So welcome to Weekend Winters. We're having the episode today because I'm flying out on business tomorrow to Norway, and I won't be in the house for the normal broadcast time, so we're doing it on a Saturday instead. So a little bit of a change of pace, and actually we're going to have to do this next week as well, because I get back from Bergen on Friday, then I'm in town on Saturday, and on Sunday I'm leaving for Tilburg to go to the Netherlands. Until Tuesday. So life is really busy these days. But I hope you guys have had a good week. And in this episode, we are going to look at a PragerU video. I've picked one out and looked at it a little bit, and it's really annoying, as PragerU videos tend to go. I already found some counter evidence to the claims that are being made. So we're going to watch that, hopefully have a good time. And in the second hour, I'm kind of open for whatever people want to discuss in terms of the show. We can discuss impeachment and Trump or some other things. I kind of have not prepped a 2-hour show, if I'm honest, because I've been cleaning my apartment. So I'm doing a really deep spring cleaning, and it feels fantastic, but as a consequence, I kind of got caught up with laundry and tidying instead of show prep. I did the PragerU stuff, but that's about as far as I got. So, also it's a lovely day, so I have the window open. So we're probably going to get some traffic noise, some Cologne life going on there. But if you listen to the happy hour, you're used to that. Okay, guys. I'm going to try to keep the show moving a little bit faster than I have been in the past. This is a goal of mine, to get through things a bit quicker. But before we start with PragerU, I want to say hello to the chat. So I'll go ahead and transition. Hey guys. Yeah, so how are you guys doing in the chat? You were listening to, Mithril says they were listening to David Davis on Any Questions. Oh, all right, so this must be the Conservative Party leadership race that's going on in the UK, or people are talking about it perhaps. Also, I see Cognitive Society is in the chat. Hello. Hi also to JMM. And it's fine on the mic. Thank you for the feedback. Happy weekend. Heard the news about Boris and Mark Shameful. I think they're the top 2 candidates for the Conservative Party race. Is that correct? And Sosh says, happy weekend all. All right, so with the chat checked in, I think we can go ahead and start with our PragerU video. As you guys can see, the one that I've chosen for us to look at today is an especially annoying and deceptive video by PragerU, their propaganda machine, called Everyone Should Stand for the National Anthem. There's so many things wrong with this video, but I'm going to try to let it play through with, like 30 seconds at a time or 45 seconds at a time in order to get through it a little bit faster, and I'm going to pick and choose my refutations. So with that, yes, this is very easily debunked. I'll get my headphones in so I can hear what you guys hear. And let's have a little listen. I'll have to check the audio to PragerU. Sorry about that. My lead got caught up in something. Let's watch this awful video. But we'll do a sound check first.
The national anthem.
Okay, that's a little on the loud side, so I'm going to take that back just a tad. And we'll start again. All right, so I'm just going to let this person talk. I guess we'll check out who the speaker is. Joy Villa, who's a singer, a songwriter, and a recording artist. All right, I mean, just to say, her background doesn't really speak to First Amendment issues of free expression. I'm not saying that she doesn't know about these things, but just to say that if they're going to have someone talk about this, it seems like PragerU writes all of these scripts and then they just give them to people to read. And I don't really know much about Joy Villa other than what's described here. And she's African American. But let's see what she and PragerU have to say. Beep beep.
The national anthem stands for freedom, even the freedom to do foolish things, like protesting the national anthem. But like my mama always said, just because you are free to do the wrong thing, it doesn't mean you should. Starting in 2016.
So it says a #1 Billboard recording artist. Okay. I mean, this apparently is her opinion, but it's not, I'm just going to point out, it's not an expert opinion. It's not a constitutional lawyer's perspective. It's a PragerU citizen opinion perspective with a lot of bad information, as we'll see.
Some professional football players have refused to stand when the national anthem is played before a game. Some of them kneel, some of them sit on the bench, some of them raise their fist, and some don't even come out of the locker room. This was all started by San Francisco 49er quarterback Colin Kaepernick. His idea was to protest the alleged mistreatment of Black people.
Not alleged. Not alleged. Very much real. Very much convictions. In fact, or lack of convictions, really, if you look at the number of police officers who are prosecuted for shooting unarmed Black men or women or killing them in other ways because of neglect in the jail or abuse, it's very, very rare that a police officer is convicted for an unarmed shooting. I think I can think of one instance, and that was, two, sorry. There was the officer in Minnesota who I think is of African descent when I saw the pictures, who shot an Australian tourist. He was convicted. We can maybe look that up if I remember later. And I think one cop who, when the man was running away from him, shot him in the back multiple times. He might have gotten convicted. But other than that, they don't tend to get convicted. We have the videotape. These are not alleged instances of police brutality or murder. They're documented cases. Just saying.
By police and by America in general.
All right, so there's going to be this, that's kind of an important thing to say because she's going to, I'll let you hear it and then point it out, but you need to hear it contiguously.
Don't even come out of the locker room. This was all started by San Francisco 49er quarterback Colin Kaepernick. His idea was to protest the alleged mistreatment of Black people by police and by America in general.
Right, and by that, we can think of institutional racism in its various forms, in not only state-sponsored ones, but informal structures of racism. For instance, people with African-American sounding names are less likely to get called back for job interviews, whereas traditionally more European names are more likely to get replies back. So there are a lot of barriers that African-Americans face, not only just in terms of getting jobs and getting good education and getting into schools, those kinds of things, but then having police brutality and harassment on sometimes daily, weekly, monthly basis in a way that does not happen with white Americans or white tourists or white residents. Not nearly. So this isn't an alleged instance of systematic discrimination across a country. It's well documented through multiple studies and other forms of data analysis. So again, just saying.
As he put it, I am not going to stand up to show pride in a flag for a country that oppresses Black people and people of color.
Okay, now...
Kaepernick no longer plays in the league.
All right, she's going to get snarky here. But before we start that, I'm just going to set the stage a little bit here. This is actually a paper I had thought about doing a video on, but in all honesty, I'm not as confident in my understanding of Bayesian analysis, so I wanted a bit more time to look at it. But in the end, it became too much work, so the video never got made. But this was published in PLOS ONE. It was published in November 5th of 2015, and it's a Bayesian analysis, which is a form of statistical analysis. It's described in the paper if you want to know the particulars of why Bayesian analysis was the correct mode of analysis. But I'll just say a multi-level Bayesian analysis of racial bias in police shootings at the county level in the United States between 2011 and 2014. Now, in the abstract, we're going to read that first, and if there are things about like multi-level that I need to explain, I will. But let's just look here. I'm going to increase the font because my computer is a bit far away. It's easier to increase the font than it is to pull the computer closer. Although I could do both, but the camera's sort of set now, so I'm going to leave it alone. All right. It says, a geographically resolved, multi-level Bayesian model is used to analyze the data presented in the U.S. police shootings database in order to investigate the extent of racial bias in the shooting of American civilians by police officers in recent years. So a geographically resolved means, I don't do a lot of geographic statistical analysis, but I know it is linked to specific geographical units in that way. Multi-level means that they are doing analysis to control for effects at, let's say, how do you describe this? All right. Multi-level modeling can do analysis at different levels of geographical units. So you can have one for a national effect, and then a state effect, and then a county effect, and if you have it, maybe a city effect. So the effect of living in the city might be different from the effect of living in a state, which might be, an effect different from the effect of living in other parts of the country or in other countries. So a multi-level model just means that you're controlling for those levels of sort of geographical influence. I hope that makes sense. Continuing on. In contrast to previous work that relied on the FBI's supplemental homicide reports that were constructed from self-reported cases of police-involved homicide, this dataset is less likely to be biased by police reporting practices. County-specific relative risk outcomes of being shot by police are estimated as a function of the interaction of. So the interaction of, here I'm going to assume they mean an interaction like a multiplication effect, so different levels that you can add up in the model. 1, whether the suspects or civilians were armed or unarmed, and 2, the race or ethnicity of the interaction, of the suspects or civilians. So those are the two effects, whether they are armed or unarmed, and information on their race or ethnicity of the people involved. The results provide evidence of a significant bias in the killing of unarmed Black men relative to unarmed white Americans. So again, when I said the interaction, they're controlling for discrete influences of your ethnicity and whether you're armed or unarmed. And then we can compare groups by odds ratios, most likely. And you'll see that the likelihood of being killed as a Black person is significantly higher than if you are a white person living in that same area. So I'm just kind of trying to interpret these a little bit for you as we go along. In that, the probability of being Black, unarmed, and shot by police is about 3.49 times the probability of being white, unarmed, and shot by police on average. All right, so if you possess those two characteristics, you're Black and unarmed, and you're in a situation where there's a police shooting, you are 3.49 or 3.5 almost times more likely than a white person, if you're Black, to be shot by the cops. That's what this is saying. Furthermore, the results of multi-level modeling show that there exists significant heterogeneity, that means significant differences, across counties in the extent of racial bias in police shootings, with some counties showing relative risk ratios of 20-to-1 or more. So that 3.49 or 3.5 times probability, that's just on average. But if you go down to, what they're saying here is if you go down to the county or more like the city levels, but the county levels, in some places being Black, it's a 20-to-1 increase in your probability, or the chances that you're going to be shot by police if you're unarmed and Black compared to a white person is 20-to-1. Finally, analysis of police shooting data as a function of county-level predictors suggests that racial bias in police shootings is most likely to emerge in police departments in larger metropolitan counties with low median incomes and a sizable portion of Black residents, especially when there is high financial inequality in that county. There is no relationship, so there's no statistical relationship that they could find through their analysis between county-level racial bias in police shootings and crime rates. So what they're saying is, based on this data, what really explains the number of police shootings is not the crime rate. It's that it's a metropolitan area with poverty and a large Black community. Those are the factors that are more likely to get you shot than living someplace where there's a lot of crime. Even race-specific crime rates. So let me read that again. There is no relationship between county-level racial bias in police shootings and crime rates, even race-specific crime rates, meaning that racial bias observed in police shootings in this dataset is not explainable as a response to local-level crime rates. And this is why I wanted to do a longer video on this, because this is a really profound study. And yes, it's one data set and it has to be triangulated against other data as well. But this is a very, very powerful finding if they've controlled for crime rates, which is what people usually associate police shootings with, and found that that doesn't explain the differences in probability. Rather, economic factors are statistically significant. Right, so now that you've got that background, and that understanding of the reality of the danger that the police pose to unarmed Black Americans and Black residents in the United States, let's go ahead and check out the rest of the video. So also Velocity11, thank you for the £1 or euro. No, that's a pound sign. Thank you so much. Hug, you get a hug. Come on, bring it in. Wow, thank you. And also a bunch of people gave me super chats for some reason during my not a happy hour with Kevin, and I didn't really get a chance to hug you guys there. So everyone who gave money, come on in. Oh, I got it. There we go. Hug. The camera is really far away. Maybe I should bring it closer. We also help with the reading factor. I'm getting closer, you guys. I'm zooming in. All right. Yeah. There we go. I am such a dork. All right. Let's go ahead. Oh, I see that Mithril in the chat is saying, I wouldn't stand for the UK national anthem. I want to see the monarchy abolished, so why would I stand for a dirge praising an institution I don't believe in? I think that being in Europe, I can see there's a really big difference in the way that nationality patriotism plays a role in even political discourse. You know, it's been pointed out that if the Prime Minister of Britain said, and may God bless the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, people would be like, what are you on about, mate? Seriously, like, that's just weird. Don't do that. That's kind of creepy. Whereas if a president doesn't say that in the United States, he's considered, his patriotism is questioned, or hers would be in the future when we finally have a woman president. But yes, this enforced observance of patriotic ceremony to the point where people are basically trying to end freedom of speech to protest a government that is killing unarmed citizens. This is institutional racism, and certainly popular culture, the emphasis of white America really not understanding the plight of Black America, and not really too many people in white America not caring about it at all, to be frank. So let's continue on with this nonsense.
Because apparently NFL owners are racist against backup quarterbacks who don't throw well.
More like because he decided to use his platform to engage in a silent protest, and the media paid attention to him. The NFL decided, not based on his merit, but on the fact that he had a conscience, to blacklist him because he was, doing something brave, but he was literally not interfering in any way. He wasn't disrupting it. If the cameras hadn't pointed at Colin Kaepernick, nobody would have known. He could have done it, without attention. So it was really the media that, and also racist conservatives who wanted to take his protest and lie about what it was about, PragerU, that really were the driving force behind the media exposure and the coverage and the backlash, as it were. They wanted the backlash, let's be frank.
But his protest lives on and has spread to college and high school athletes. Even elementary school kids have gotten into the act.
I just want to say, citation needed. Really, even if one kid at one elementary school decided to do this, so what? I mean, there are 330 million people plus, I think, at this point in the States. So, yeah, I mean, it's just, they would take one instance and then just say elementary schools, as if this was some sort of rampant thing that was, blazing across America. And the fact is, this video is from, I think, a couple years ago now. It was not the case that, students, 2017, at the height of it. It's not like school events were being shut down because students were kneeling on the pitch or, the iron grid before a game. This is a misrepresentation in order to be dramatic and hyperbolic.
I like football, and I sing the anthem publicly at events. This doesn't make me an expert, but I've got a problem with some things here. First, the protest is based on something that just isn't true.
I've already shown you it totally is true. So all of this is going to be a lie, but I'm going to love this, how they're going to do, as you'll see, he shouldn't be protesting this because it isn't true, but even if it were true, it's still wrong to protest the unarmed execution of people because of their skin color in a pattern that is racist and goes all the way back to slavery times, and we still haven't addressed it. Sorry, I've interrupted, but let me hit play and you can hear her do that, set up that nonsense.
And second, even if it were true, the protest is misdirected and self-defeating. Let's start with problem one. Despite what we're told by Black Lives Matter and their media allies, the police are not engaged in a coordinated campaign to destroy the Black race.
Okay, so this is a straw man argument, logical fallacy, because, of course, if it wasn't for straw man arguments and logical fallacies, PragerU wouldn't have any. Fact is that the whole idea of this coordinated campaign is kind of the same false straw man that they put up about patriarchy. Like, men have to be conspiring against women to keep women out of government and business and education and, very high status professions and executive positions as a conspiracy in order for there to be patriarchy. It can be informal, unconscious, just replicating the bigotry of existing institutions. And they're setting up a straw man here by implying that the police are somehow conspiring and coordinating. Like, okay, well, you'll kill this many Black people and we'll kill that many Black people. And that, of course, is not the problem. The problem is that the policies come historically out of policies that were targeting and designed to be oppressive to the Black community. That officers act in different ways to Black and white unarmed citizens, as this data we saw shows, and this is from 2011 to 2014. Right, so this isn't 1990 data or 1970 data. This was just a couple years. This is data from a couple years before the protest started. So we can dismiss this as a straw man argument, because we can just dismiss it as a straw man argument, but also use this opportunity to say it doesn't have to be coordinated at some sort of conspiratorial level for it to be real. Individual or institutional practices of racism are deadly, and we know that from the body count.
As Harvard professor Roland Fryer, who happens to be Black.
Okay, and he's an economics professor, which, okay, he knows some statistics, but being an economist, it doesn't immediately say to me that he's been looking at data like this, right? This kind of data. Maybe he has, but they're not going to quote a paper he's written. They're just going to quote him as a guy, and his opinion, of course, is not... his opinion must be put up against the actual facts, and of course we defer to the data over opinion because the data have been collected systematically and in a way that's unbiased, whereas a person who has an opinion or someone who's being cherry-picked in a PragerU video, that's not a counter to that Bayesian analysis.
And others have shown there is no evidence of racial bias in police shootings.
Yeah, except there totally is. He can say there's not, and they can quote him saying that, but I just showed y'all. There totally is. There totally is. Seeing a little bit about... Yeah, in 2014, just to say, Kyle Wagner began an open contribution campaign to compile records of all police-involved shootings in the United States between 2011 and 14 in an attempt to better record the use of lethal force by police. The U.S. Police Shooting Database collects information on the race or ethnicity of civilians shot by police, their status as armed or unarmed, the identity of the officers involved, relevant geographic information, and citations to detailed descriptions of the events. Now, that's a really, really valuable form of data when, as they say here, the FBI's Supplementary Homicide Report or the CDC's National Vital Statistics System, the records are often censored, or critical information, such as the names of the officers involved, lack independent evaluation of the justification for the shooting and are selectively published. The FBI data, for instance, are not only incomplete, but may be structurally biased by the reporting behaviors of police, as the majority of the 17,000 police departments in the United States do not file fatal police shooting reports, or do so only selectively. According to Gabrielson et al., Florida departments have failed to file reports since 1997. The data collected thus far by the USPSD to help shed light on racial bias in police shootings in Florida, which has some of the most racially biased police shooting rates in the nation. In Miami-Dade, for instance, unarmed black individuals are estimated to be more than 22 times as likely to be shot by police than unarmed white individuals. Such patterns in police violence have been immune to public scrutiny until now. And that's why this independent system is such a more accurate and more realistic and better database than the FBI one, which perhaps if this guy, this economist, was using the FBI data system, maybe you would find no racial evidence in police shootings because the data are biased. Whereas if you have an outside person doing it based on news reports and collecting that data systematically for analysis, there's no bias. Everything gets reported. So just denied PragerU. No chance of pulling this crap on our show. In
any case, the thing that makes headlines, police shootings of unarmed black men, is very rare.
But it's way, way more likely to happen to an unarmed black man than a white person. And that's the point. If something is rare, but it disproportionately kills one group of people, that's still a problem. People are still dying. And the United States, as you guys probably know, has one of the highest rates of, gun-related deaths and also police shootings. So the idea that because something is rare, we don't have to care about it, or it's not really a problem, big lie. Big lie.
How rare? Statistics show that an unarmed black man is more likely to be killed by lightning than a policeman.
And that means a white person is 22 times less likely than that black person to be struck by lightning in parts of Florida. And was it Dade? Miami-Dade? That's still a racial bias. I'm not going to repeat myself, but this argument's in the dust. Gone. Can't buy.
So if police are trying to persecute black folks, they're doing a really bad job.
No, actually, as we saw, they are lethally effective at it. They are lethally effective at killing unarmed black civilians and citizens compared with their white counterparts. And it's that bias that's what Kaepernick was pointing out and bringing attention to. 22 times more likely, or 20 times more likely. That's ridiculous.
Am I saying racism doesn't exist? Of course not. Am I saying racist cops don't exist? Of course not. But I would say this: blacks have a lot more to fear from black criminals than from the police.
And as we can see, this is just awful race baiting crap, in my opinion. It's a false equivalence, because the state, the police, they take an oath to protect and serve. And if the police are disproportionately killing certain Americans over other groups of Americans because of that racial bias, and we can control for other effects or other factors like economics and crime rates and having a gun, not having a gun, all that kind of stuff, that is its own issue. And to kind of compare it to like, oh, well, it's more dangerous for you to go into a bad part of town because you might get mugged than for you to be shot by the police. This is, just shut that argument down. The point is, the police are paid for by taxpayer money. And if you are paying your taxes and the police are killing you and people in your community, that in of itself is a problem entirely separate from the criminality that people face. It's the disproportionate lethality, is that a word? Or lethal use of force against one community. And we have the data that shows it happens. And it's like ridiculous levels of racial bias.
The police keep us safe, and they risk their lives every day doing it.
Yeah, some police do a good job. Some police do a probably crappy job. And some police kill people. Just because there are good cops doesn't mean we have we can't criticize lethal shootings of unarmed civilians. It's even ridiculous when you say it. How are we even having to debate whether it's right or wrong to protest the murder of unarmed civilians by police paid for with their own tax dollars? Continuing.
That sounds like it's a lot more deserving of a thank you than a screw you.
Oh, that slap hand. It's going. Ooh. Again, it's not like it's an either or. You're like, oh, the police do a good job, and oh, maybe they kill some people, but oh, what can you do? No, police in other countries don't kill their citizens at the same rate we do in America. Why can't we talk about that? Oh, because it's based in racism, and when we talk about racist issues, it makes conservatives, especially white conservatives, but not just conservatives, whites, uncomfortable. And it's apparently to them less important to save lives than it is to make sure that white people with sensitive feelings about hearing about racial injustice feel slightly discomforted. I don't understand this. I can't make that calculation compute in my head.
Now, problem 2. The protest is misdirected and self-defeating. The American flag and the national anthem are symbols that represent our country.
Correct. And we pay for police, which are agents of the state, with our taxes. They are state employees. They are part there. And so they are, if you think about state institutions represent the government, okay, you could have the state flag, but that would make a little less sense considering that we see this happens across the country. So protesting the flag is protesting actions by the state. And I don't understand why people are so offended, considering how often Republicans complain that government is pointless and terrible and does all the wrong things. They're constantly tearing down our country and our government. But of course, when you start to point out racism and you use the symbol of the state, which is a flag, to do it, oh, no, suddenly now you shouldn't criticize people, and they want to hide behind the military. It's not the military that are killing people. It's the police, taxpayer funded by the people that they are killing.
Even if some police officers are racist jerks, it doesn't make sense to protest those particular jerks by demonstrating against the country as a whole.
Yeah, it actually does. Because the police get away with these murders because of department policies. And the police aren't we're not seeing a reduction in the number of shootings because of police policies and procedures. So what we have is a police department that has historically been oppressive of Black people, continuing to be discriminatory and racist and oppressive of Black citizens and Black residents. And that is an institution. So it's not just a few bad apples, because the few bad apples are still walking a beat. So that means that there's a problem in the institution, and that's why Black Lives Matters wants to. I was going to possessive it, and then I didn't. But anyway, BLM, one of their political goals was to establish independent police review boards for shootings, rather than having it being handled by internal affairs and having cops investigate cops. Impanel a group of citizens who are independent to look at police shootings and whether or not the police acted appropriately and what could have been done to prevent it and how it was handled afterwards. Take it out of the police departments. That's a great idea. And you can't do that if you don't address the fact that it's a problem of the institutions, not just a few bad apples, which of course is what white people want to say, racist white people want to say, in order to distance themselves from any accountability or culpability or having to do something to fix the problem.
Martin Luther King Jr. protested discrimination against Blacks on city buses by boycotting city buses.
Yeah, and Colin Kaepernick had a national platform, and he was being asked to stand up and salute a flag, the flag that was representing the institutions that were murdering unarmed Black citizens at a rate sometimes of 20-1 compared with their white counterparts. And he used that opportunity. So it wasn't... She wants to discredit him as saying, like, he shouldn't have been protesting at the NFL games, but that was his platform. It was the one platform he did have. So this is a really bad argument just in general, because clearly if Kaepernick's intention was to get attention to his issue, he did that. He definitely did that. And so he had a really, really successful protest. It cost him his job, but he had the entire nation taking notice for months. And there's a reason why a lot of people consider him a hero, including myself. And that's why. He didn't just talk about it, he lived it and he committed to it. And he paid a social and career price for it.
He never denigrated the flag or the anthem.
I don't know about that. And also, if MLK was a professional athlete, he would have. If we remember the Olympics in the 1960s and the protests, I don't know if MLK was still alive when they did the Black Power salute during the Olympics and everyone freaked out. So clearly the flag and protest have gone together in the past.
In fact, he did the opposite. He argued that the people who oppress Blacks are the ones denigrating the flag and what it stands for.
I don't see any quotes there. I have no idea what that means. Like, he literally could have never said that, and they just said that, they inferred that.
And what does it stand
case.
for? Ironically, it's the protesters themselves who give us the answer. It stands for freedom. The fact that you can disrespect the anthem and the flag proves that you're free. Anyone who doesn't stand for the...
Right, so you have the ability, right? You have the right to protest it legally, but what they're going to say is, we're going to shame you and use all these social constructs to prevent you from actually exercising your free speech. That's how free you are. You're so free to protest the flag that we are going to shame you and make it impossible and for anyone to actually protest the flag. James says, I'd like a citation for that MLK reference. So would I, James. So would I.
The anthem would do themselves a favor if they studied some current events. They'd learn that oppressive countries don't allow anyone to publicly disrespect.
Okay, this is a relative deprivation argument. So it's saying, look, maybe you are getting murdered by the police, unarmed, just going about your daily life and then end up dead, or you go out, you wake up in the morning and you say goodbye to your child and they never come home because they're murdered by police. That's going to happen to 20 times more often in certain parts of this country to black families than a white family. But, we shouldn't really care, because in other countries, they don't even have the ability to protest that. Here, you have the ability, we just won't let you. We're going to punish you in every way we can to make sure you don't use your free speech rights. Aren't you freer? So what are you complaining about, all these unarmed civilians being murdered by cops that they paid the taxes of those cops? Why should they be complaining? I tell you what, if police were gunning down and killing white people at the rates that they kill unarmed black residents and citizens, you bet we would have legislation. You bet this would be it happening in Congress in terms of congressional hearings and federal regulation of police. But it's because who gets shot and the unfair distribution of political power that it's not being addressed with the seriousness it would be if it was white people.
Respect national symbols, much less earn millions of dollars while doing it. You won't see anyone sitting for their national anthem in North Korea or Iran.
What? Oh, those are our choices? Really? It's either America or North Korea or Iran. What about, like Germany or the UK or one of the Scandinavian countries? It's always got to be the worst case scenario. And this is the same thing they do with feminism. Why are you complaining about sexual harassment at work? Why aren't you doing more to help women in Saudi Arabia? What can I do about women in Saudi Arabia? I can talk about it, but I can't do anything. But I can do something about this. It's a way to discredit you with a logical fallacy, basically.
Well, you might, but that will be the last time you see them. Which brings me to my final point. In America, where you are free to sit or stand during the national anthem, sitting when you should be standing is more a statement about you.
Yes. Dan, you have that right to protest, but if you do, you're a dirtbag. You're a terrible person. You shouldn't be protesting. You have the right to, but you shouldn't be protesting. If you use your rights, it just shows that you don't deserve them. Brains everywhere.
Than about America. And you don't come off too well.
Yeah, I'm going to say the same about you, Miss, what was your name again? Number one Billboard artist, Joy Villa. Say, you're spreading misinformation, lies, and racist propaganda for money. You don't come off so well.
You come off, frankly, as ignorant and ungrateful.
Mirror, holding it up. Woo, look at that PragerU. Look at that PragerU. That's you. Definitely ignorant. Ungrateful. Yeah, one could maybe twist it around a little bit to say if you think that stopping people protesting or making it impossible for people to protest is a sign of how free they are, you really don't appreciate the rights in terms of extending them to other people.
Ignorant about a country that works to correct its faults.
Oh my, no. Did you guys hear the reparations conversation we just had I had yesterday with Highly Critical? America, I'm trying to get this show monetized because having Kevin on demonetizes me a lot. But America hasn't done to correct its faults when it comes to racism. I mean, we barely got the Civil Rights Act passed. And people are trying to destroy affirmative action, which is a pretty mild way of addressing historical racist and other barriers, right? Because it's not just African Americans, obviously. Affirmative action is for all traditionally marginalized groups. We had affirmative action for about 20 years, and conservatives all right, that's enough. We don't need this anymore. Everything's fine. Reparations. Mitch McConnell, did you hear him talk about reparations with such contempt? I guess somehow we're not living with the legacy of slavery. And I didn't mention this on my thing with Highly Critical, and I meant to. I was putting pieces together All right, from 2 different shows. So from A Happy Hour with Kevin, I talked about the true crime podcast with Frank Hamer, who was living in East Texas, and he was the one who organized the hunt for Bonnie and Clyde. But he was also a Texas Ranger, and he had several times in his career to stop lynch mobs from killing black men in East Texas. And the author of the book was describing how East Texas and West Texas were very different. The East Texas was basically still the South, sort of like Civil War South, whereas West Texas was part of the annex after the Mexican-American War. And in West Texas, this was really interesting. The Mexican residents who were there and became part of the United States after the treaty maintained their property rights. They maintained their ability to own homes and to live where they did, and they stayed basically put. And that's, for me, was like, okay, this explains a lot about wealth gaps in different communities in the United States, because we know that in terms of his family wealth, whites have the most amount of wealth that they pass on. Even if you're not super rich, if your parents owned their own home, that's an asset that they can then pass on to you, whoever they want, but presumably their kids, when they die. And as the children, they didn't have to do the work for that house. They just inherit that wealth and they can build on that. The next group is Hispanic Americans in terms of in terms of wealth and home ownership. And then the lowest was African Americans. And so that, to me at least, made sense as to why Hispanic Americans have more, are in second. And part of that might be, not obviously all of it, but tied to that idea that they maintained their property and the wealth that went along with it and passed that on. Whereas when the slaves were freed, they were literally just turned loose with nothing. No compensation for their lifetime of labor. No compensation for having their children stolen from them or being taken from their families. No compensation for being bought and sold like property. Nothing. Nothing. And then we wonder why and no remedial education services were offered. No job training was offered. And so to say that America works to correct its faults might be one of the biggest lies in this video. And the dumb thing about this is that if we could just as a country get our act together and rebalance, I mean, it's not like there's not enough money to go around. Corporations got more than they know what to do with, and we're blowing holes in the deficit. You want to know how to get some real economic stimulus going? Engage in a systematic reparations program to achieve a more equitable balance of national resources. And we saw in this study, you know what gets black people shot in America? It's not living in a crime-ridden area. It's living in an area of poverty. It's living in an urban area with low median incomes and a sizable portion of black residents, especially when there is high financial inequality in that county. So if those are the causal mechanisms, let's fix the problems at the source, which is poverty. I mean, I guess I'm just being a scientist, but it seems kind of logical to me.
And ungrateful for the opportunity and freedom that it offers all its citizens.
Yep, if you take your opportunity to use your freedoms, you're ungrateful. Oh, I hate this gaslighting. It's gaslighting.
For that, I'm standing. How about you? I'm Joy Villa.
I will sit for every national anthem I have the opportunity to do so in the States. The only reason I didn't when I went home last time was because I didn't go anything that involved the national anthem. But I would sit. I would kneel. I would definitely continue that protest. But I'm an ass. All right, guys. Well, despite my bestest efforts, I still went like 40 minutes on the PragerU video. I just can't help it. It takes me 8 minutes to always break down 1 minute of PragerU nonsense. But on the plus side, we are right on time as far as the show goes. So what I'll do is I'll check the chat a little bit. I don't see anyone atting me with questions. I see reactions, for instance, and little side conversations, but just gonna check really quick to see. I know you guys are having your side conversation. Was there not a problem that unfairly recent race was not mentioned in the case? Sorry, crime statistics. Yes, when you're trying to get police to report on ethnicity and stuff, that can be somewhat, they consider it like bureaucratic burdensome or whatever else. So yes, they, as we saw, the reporting on police shootings is not systematized by law. It's not universal. It's not even required or mandatory. It's elective. And that really makes me question all of the data, all of the analysis based on that FBI data set. I think you would have to take every single form of analysis ever run on that, well, not every, but all the ones that were really important or influential or well cited, and conduct the exact same model analysis using the more recent data set, the more neutral one, and see if you can replicate your findings. I think you wouldn't, not because the model's changed. Obviously the model would stay the same, but having biased data versus unbiased data will make a huge difference in the results, as it does. I saw a classic, Chris writes, I saw a classic Simpsons episode from the 90s. Homer was listening to conservative radio despite being apolitical. How can we convert more Homer Simpsons to the left? Oh, that's a big question. Can I think about it during the break? All right, guys, let's take whatever it is to get us to the top of the hour. 9-minute break. That sounds fair. And you guys can watch some really, really cute animal videos while I'm away. No coffee, no caffeine after midday. So I'll have to find something else to do and stretch my legs. Or maybe I'll sit out in the window and just relax. But yeah, see you guys back here in 8 minutes. Yeah, I needed to hit the buttons and then I'm all set to go. All right, see you guys in a bit.
It's only been lonely, I feel so lonely. I decide to rain. The grains on my head is sad to fade away. I hear your quiet slowly distracts my head. It's a girl in the middle of the nothingness. You tell me why to alter the truth, and I spend 3 days explaining with you. And you disappear in front of my eyes. So that's why I remember I'm unrealized. And I really meant to sunshine, my look. And I really meant to sunshine, baby. Oh, yeah. And I really meant to sunshine, my love. And I really meant to sunshine, baby. Oh, yeah. Thousands of people and friends, regardless directions ahead. It's only been lonely, I feel so lonely. I decide to rain. The grains on my head is sad to fade away. I hear your quiet slowly distracts my head. It's a girl in the middle of the nothingness. And you tell me why to alter my truth, and I spend 3 days explaining to you. And you disappear in front of my eyes. So that's why I remember I'm unrealized. And I really meant the sunshine, my love. And I really miss the sunshine, baby. Oh, any shadow the end of the world. I would never do love, but I would call it vegan. Can't express me still, can't express me still. The absolution. Can't express me still, can't express me still. The absolution of love. It's a precious baby, it's a precious baby. That's what you are. It's a precious baby, it's a precious baby. That's what you are. Next time you say don't talk, I say you talk. Because no one's lived my life. I need to compromise my life. And I say that you always saw my bad side. Because can't express me still, can't express me still. Because can't express me still, can't express me still. The absolution. It's a precious baby, it's a precious baby. That's what you are. It's a precious baby, it's a precious baby. That's what you. It's a precious baby, it's a precious baby. That's what you are. It's a precious baby, it's a precious baby. That's what you are. The absolution of love. The absolution of love. The absolution of love. The absolution of love.
And we're back. I'm technically a minute early, but I also just thought that would be a good time to stop because of the music. Yes, and I noticed someone was complaining about the music in the comments, but I'm using Yellow Cab because it's Creative Commons. They will not copyright claim or demonetize my content. So if you guys have Creative Commons attribution or anything that allows for like commercial use or remixing or share alike, you can provide those in the comment section below. I will check them out. Obviously, I'm not just going to put on whatever. I need to make sure I like it too. But yeah. So in terms of the rest of the show, like I said, I'm sorry. I'm sadly unorganized because I was organizing my life and packing and things like that. So this might end up being a shorter show, which do I feel bad about? I don't know. You guys got me for an hour. Could have had me for none, so I don't feel too bad. But if there is something in the chat that you guys want me to react to in particular, I'll go ahead and have a look at that. Maybe what I can do is, I thought there was something on my Twitter feed that irritated me of late. I'll go looking for that. And if I find that and it can remind myself what irritated me, I can have a bit of a rant. Bookmarks. Oh, yes. This is actually really interesting. I don't think I'll get a copyright claim off of this. But this is actually really important to know. It was the ACLU was, I'll show you the thread. The ACLU was putting out information about to people to understand when a warrant is a constitutionally valid warrant versus things that are not. So they write the ICE Immigration Customs Enforcement. Warrant on the left does not authorize agents to enter a home without permission. And there's a difference between an ICE warrant and a warrant that was issued by a judge. The main one is whether or not they can come into your property or come into your personal space or cross your, some sort of threshold. Because we have to remember that in the Constitution, which one is it that, constitutional amendments, there's a very specific wording. Constitution, warrants, a warrant clause. It's very particular, and it's in the Constitution. And the founders were very particular about this, I'm sure because it affected them and the kinds of warrants that the king would issue, whatever else, or the governors would issue, and whether or not they were valid or whatever else. So I don't know the history about it. I'm a little bit making this up, so let's read what is said here. The warrant clause refers to a clause in the U.S. Constitution that states, warrants can only be issued on probable cause. And this clause ensures the right of a person to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects, and ensures against unreasonable searches and seizures. This clause ensures that there shall not be any violation of the rights, and no warrants shall be issued unless there is a probable cause supported by an oath or affirmation. And that was included through the Fourth Amendment, the Bill of Rights initially, that were added to the Constitution. So you can have a warrant to arrest someone, but if it's not signed by a judge, you can't go into somebody's house to arrest them. You can't go into their personal space. And that's the difference here. So it's kind of a subtle difference, but in certain situations, as we'll see, it becomes a really important difference to know. I'm going to watch this episode of Now This, and we're going to, is the audio going yet? No, it doesn't seem to be. Oh, because yes, I have it on the right screen. That's okay. You guys, I thought for a second I had the wrong screen up, but I don't. Also, I've obviously shifted positions since I last did my camera work, so there we go. I'm a bit more centered now. Hold on. Okay. So the situation here is that this man has two undocumented people in his car. He's a citizen, and he was stopped by ICE, and the officer wants to get into the car to arrest the immigrants, the undocumented immigrants, or to get him to have them step out of the car. And he's basically saying, look, they're in my car. This is the equivalent to my property. You can't come in. And that's what's being debated here between the officer and the citizen here who's driving. So let's go ahead and have a listen to this, because this might be important to know one day. You might need to know this, or you might know someone who's in a situation that is facing this. You never know. And, knowledge is power. So let's have a little listen to this so we all get smarter.
That is a warrant.
No, it's not. It's a Department of Homeland Security order.
It's a warrant.
Okay. No, it's not a warrant. It's not a warrant under the Constitution of the United States.
Warrant of arrest.
Oh, sorry. I'll just go back and read that out loud for people who are listening rather than watching the podcast. It says, this ICE arrest was shut down by a citizen who knew his rights.
Warrant of arrest of alien.
Yeah, warrant of arrest of alien not signed by a judge. It's not a judicial warrant. I have no obligation to oblige by that warrant.
So Brian McCormick is the executive director of a local immigrant rights group. He was pulled over with two undocumented immigrants in his car. ICE agents attempted to detain McCormick's passengers.
This is a lawful warrant
Signed by a judge
of the Immigration and Nationality Act, and an official designated with that authority.
Are you hearing this, Mark?
Yeah, I'll tell him I'm on my way.
Our attorney's on his way.
Okay. What's that gonna?
That's not a warrant.
That is a warrant.
No, it's not. It's a Department of Homeland Security order.
It's a warrant.
Okay. No, it's not a warrant. It's not a warrant under the Constitution of the United States.
He keeps repeating that because of what we just looked at. And in particular, this really strict requirement that you need probable cause in order to enter somebody's house or their property or conduct, a search and seizure. And he doesn't have that warrant. He's not obtained probable cause that would authorize him to invade that person's personal space because it was not signed by a judge. So that's why he keeps saying it's not a warrant under the Constitution of the United States.
It's a warrant under the Immigration and Nationality Act of the United States.
Okay, that's fine, but it's not under the Constitution. You have no jurisdiction over me as a citizen. I'm the driver of this vehicle.
The ICE warrant pause that quick. An ICE warrant directs various federal immigration enforcement agents to arrest the person named in the warrant. Because it is ... not issued by a judge, an ICE warrant does not give the immigration enforcement officer the authority to demand entry to a home or a private space in order to make the arrest. McCormick said ICE tried to intimidate him into complying.
Okay, are you familiar with Title 8, Section 1324 of U.S. Code?
Somewhat.
Somewhat. In what regard?
I'm studying to be a Department of Justice accredited representative, so I've been through trainings.
Okay.
And I have copies of actually, in this box right here, I have a copy of a real warrant and a copy of that, just so people know not to listen to that.
Okay. So you're
Excellent.
aware of the statutes governing transporting and harboring illegal aliens in the United States?
I am.
Okay.
ICE tried to intimidate me into relinquishing my rights, and I upheld my unwavering defense of our community, he said. The guy said, sorry, it went too fast, I didn't get his last name. ICE officers eventually left the scene without making any arrests. An individual interfered with the enforcement action, causing officers to instead depart the scene to avoid further disruption, was their official statement. McCormick was, I'm trying to read really fast. McCormick was accompanying the two immigrants to court for traffic-related offenses on the morning of the incident. He says he was pulled over after leaving court. ICE has increasingly used courthouse arrests, especially in New York. One study found a 17,000% increase of those arrests, or that type of arrest, in New York from 2016 to 2018. So know your rights, people. If you know someone who has undocumented workers in their house or in their car, and someone comes over with a warrant not signed by a judge, not due to probable cause, not valid to conduct a search and seizure, come into your house with permission as delineated by our rights under the 4th Amendment, they can't come in. They can't come in. I mean, that's it. That's as far as it goes, but they can't intimidate you or arrest you for not giving in to not a legitimate warrant. So that's your little bit of Get Smarter, something that you guys maybe didn't know. I didn't know before I saw it, so I thought it was very good and wanted to... I was maybe going to do it for the happy hour, but I just consumed it for the show instead. Okay, so Mithril's got to go. Parental taxi service required. Enjoy. Parental taxi service. ICE doesn't care. So knowing your rights under the law is interference. Yeah, exactly. Exactly, James. All right. Well, I'm sorry, you guys. I'm going to cut this show a little bit short. Mostly because I'm super tired. I got up at like 8:30 this morning and started doing laundry and cleaning my house to finish up before I went. You know what I did? I spent the whole morning getting my house in really great shape and looking awesome so I can enjoy it for 24 hours and then leave it for 5 days. So I'm not going to even be here to enjoy how awesome my place is. But it'll be awesome in my absence. I guess I will know that. I don't think I'll sleep any easier. But other than that, this isn't Sunday? No, isn't that kind of strange? I don't know if there's going to be a happy hour, by the way, this week. because I'm going to be in Bergen and I normally run the EV stuff, and so Kevin thought, instead of trying to do it with his, and sorry, I'm getting a little bit coffee here. I'm just going to... Better. Kevin, we just thought we should maybe just like take 5 days off, unless some big YouTube drama emergency happens, in which case, of course, I can do a phone in from Bergen. So just as a little heads up, probably won't be having a happy hour this week, and I have to check. There might be an episode of Culture Club, and I meant to be hosting, but I can't because I'm going to be in Bergen. And so I was talking with Culture Shots and with Chrisiosity. I was just going to check my Twitter to see if we actually set up a time and date, because I did tell them I'm happy to do it this week, but I can't host. And then we got off in a different conversation, so I have to scroll back. Yada yada yada. Da 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 da. I don't think anyone's offered to host yet for me, so I don't know if the show is going to happen. I will get back to you on that one. But when we do have the episode of Culture Club, it's going to be on... Oh, I love this movie. I watched it again in German, which was kind of weird, but it's still great. Stage Beauty. It's so complicated and so complex, and yet so straightforward. There's so many layers to it, so many elements to it. The characters are all so rich and deep and come across as really true people with genuine motivations, and there's not really any good guys or bad guys because everybody's complicated. Stage Beauty, it's great. If you haven't seen it, definitely check it out, and we'll be talking about it on Culture Club. I don't know whose channel it'll be on. I don't know when it's going to be or at what time, but when I do, I'll let you know. I'll share it around on Twitter and Facebook and stuff. So basically kind of really dodgy schedule, and we're going to be doing this show again next Saturday because I won't be available next Sunday. So, any more in the chat? Watching Good Omens. Ooh, yes, Good Omens. Wasn't that the one that was ticking off Christians? I saw an article in Pathos that some Christian groups had organized a petition and got 22,000 signatures to get Netflix to not air Good Omens, but it is actually on Amazon Prime, not on Netflix, and it's already the series is over, so they can't stop production on it. That's just very, very funny. Das Boot is the best German movie. I've not seen Das Boot, sorry, but it's long and it's on a submarine, so I don't know. I have this fear of being in a confined space that's filling up with water and it's dark. So I don't really dig submarine movies except for The Hunt for Red October. That one's okay because it's got awesome action, but generally I don't like. You can't think of anything to ask to. Okay, so even 250. It's like it's summer. My neighbors are grilling, by the way, during the break. I could smell that they've got the barbecue blocks. What are those called? The charcoal briquettes. Is that what they're called? Whatever. They're going to be cooking up some food on the grill very shortly here. So why don't you guys go do that if it's daytime where you are, and if it's not, maybe you can do it tomorrow. But until I guess probably next week Saturday, guys. You're going to be in Cologne. Oh, you're going to be in Cologne next weekend. Yeah, but I can do the show after. I'm going to do the show after we meet up. So I'm going to be meeting up with Chris here in Cologne. Sorry, I just suddenly I started to feel the need to I was gonna cough, but yes, that's it. German's barbecue. Oh yeah, German's barbecue. Oh, definitely grillen. Letzte Wochenende habe ich viele Essen gegrillt. Yeah, gegrilling. Yeah, gegrillt. I think that was right. Someone's there cringing at my horrible German. So winter where you are, 12 degrees. It's about 25 where I am. And I'm loving it. I love summer. I'm a summer child. All right, I'm just nattering to the chat now, which is always enjoyable. But thanks, you guys. I hope to see you here. Basically, let's do the same time next week. And until then, people in the chat, you've been awesome. People in the future watching, you've been awesome. And yeah, I was Christy. Did I mention that part? And you guys are always awesome. So I will stop the stream and see you guys in Twitter and Facebook and other places. So until later, bye-bye.